Australians, including right across my home city of Melbourne and state of Victoria, indeed most of the country, are sick of the never-ending lockdowns. Australians want the lockdowns to end and they want to be safe. Now, the lockdowns are the Prime Minister's fault. Make no mistake, it's because he didn't order enough vaccines and he didn't build purpose-built quarantine. But the only way for these two things to be achieved, for the lockdowns to end and for tens of thousands of our citizens not to then die from this deadly disease, is if we have enough vaccines. By any measure, Australia's vaccine rollout has been a shambles. I want to read some quotes, Deputy Speaker. The biggest failure of public administration I can recall. A colossal failure. A phenomenal failure. That wasn't a Labor person. That was the previous Liberal Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, talking about the government's shambles of a rollout. Another quote. The very reason we are locked down, which is so frustrating when so many parts of the world are now opening up, is simply because our government failed to buy enough vaccines. Also the previous Liberal Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull. I mean, if that's the commentary the government's getting from its friends, the incompetence and failure is bad enough, Deputy Speaker, but what makes it even worse is the Prime Minister's abject refusal to do his job, to take responsibility and to face up to his failure. At every turn, we've had 18 months of spin, of gaslighting Australians, of blaming everyone else. Well, it's not me, it's the state's faults. State's fault, they were supposed to do that. Well, it's not me, it's Labor, they're undermining our vaccine rollout. Never mind his own backbench spreading misinformation day after day. Half the government senators seem to be in on it. It's the man on the moon, it's not me, it's someone else. Now he's got Lieutenant General Fleuren to point out when something goes wrong. The Prime Minister told Australians we're at the front of the queue. I mean, a more ridiculous, untrue statement I could not think of. At the end of June this year, we were last in the OECD, last in the developed world, 113th in the world for the rollout. The Prime Minister said only yesterday, well, we've overcome the problems, it's all on track. We're still near last in the developed world, Deputy Speaker, while the rest of the world is opening up. I mean, try telling people in Melbourne who get there at 6 a.m. hoping for a cancellation to get a jab of Pfizer and protect themselves and their family that it's all going really well. This is the second winter that my home city has lived through lockdown, but this time it's avoidable if this bloke who sits in the chair over there had ordered enough vaccines. He said it's not a race, and then he blamed Brendan Murphy and pretended he didn't say that. It was always a race to save lives, to save livelihoods, and to get this country opened up and to stop the lockdowns. People are sick of lockdowns. They're suffering because of this Prime Minister's failure to run and win that race. The race was at two levels, of course. There was supply. You've got to have enough vaccines. He didn't order the Pfizer until last December. He didn't get a diverse supply of vaccines, as was best practice, 4 to 6 different types. He put all his eggs in one basket. Other countries had placed their orders July last year. He didn't get the order until the day before Christmas. We're at the back of the queue. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that Australia, frankly, is a small country. We're a small market. We don't have much leverage with Big Pharma. We had to be at the very front of the queue to get our place. The government has been stingy on vaccines and stingy on quarantine. And frankly, because of their stinginess last year, they've blown tens of billions of dollars in unnecessary economic support that we wouldn't have had to pay. There's tens of billions of dollars being loaded on the national debt by these incompetent geniuses over there that the next generation are going to be asked to repay, let alone the damage to mental health of people suffering through lockdowns, living alone. Record numbers of calls to Lifeline, our national suicide prevention hotline. The Prime Minister has missed every target he set. 4 million by the end of March. Well, he got 600,000. All aged care workers and residents vaccinated by Easter. He did mean last Easter, not next Easter. He still hasn't met that target. Now he's given up on targets. There's no trajectory. We've just got horizons. Horizons are something you never actually get to, Deputy Speaker. So I asked the Prime Minister, when are we going to get to this 80% target? When's the magical date of Freedom Day that might arrive and all these good things over the horizon? He's not prepared to commit because all he wants to do is fight with the states and territories when it suits him 24-hour news cycle. You actually got to sit down and get on with the states and territories to get the distribution right. What about teenagers? Parents are crying out for vaccinations. What about booster shots? I mean, the Prime Minister will be due for his booster shot in 2 months. Is he going to put himself in the front of that queue while the rest of Australia is still waiting? Frankly, Deputy Speaker, Australians are dangerously exposed because of his vaccination failure and quarantine failure. People in Sydney are now dying. Gladys Berejiklian said only yesterday, the 30th of August, well, October's going to be the worst month for ICU. You're a paediatrician. I know you live and breathe this, Deputy Speaker. It's your colleagues putting their own lives and families' safety at risk to save people's lives because he did not do his job. Do not expect Australians, though, to forgive or forget this failure. We will get through this regardless of the Prime Minister and the government's incompetence, their criminal, lethal negligence. He wants people to now forget his failure and pretend he's for freedom. Gaslighter in chief. So yes, we will do it together. The Minister for Health can have the money if he says he needs it now to buy more vaccines and buy booster shots, but this government's failure cannot be forgiven.